Let's take a look at a situation where mines play a pivotal part in the action. In this example, the Soviet player has activated the 57th Guards Motor Rifle Division, and he is contemplating how he is going to get through this NATO minefield and force the Americans out of this gap. So he expects that this will probably be pretty heavily defended, and so he plans an assault operation for the 170th Guards. During the reconnaissance segment, he attempts to see this hex here. So he refers to his reconnaissance table and sees that a town hex at a range of 2 through 3 requires him to roll a 6. He rolls the die, he rolls a 4, and that means that he has missed this hex. So he reconsiders. That has consumed one of his RPs for his forward headquarters here, and thinks that perhaps he can turn mines back on the NATO player. So he determines that he will expend his last reconnaissance point to attempt to acquire this empty hex here. He again refers to the reconnaissance table and sees that a range of 2 through 3, he only needs to roll a 2 or higher to be able to see this hex. In the event, he rolls a 7, and that means that he's successfully acquired the hex. So he places an acquired marker in this hex. He refers to his combat support points track and sees that he does indeed have 2 ADM points. So he chooses to expend one of these ADM points, and that enables him to make a ADM strike against the hex that he's just acquired. So he expends that point and places a minefield in this hex. This is now going to complicate NATO's life in the ensuing operation. This also means that this unit is fired. Play now proceeds to the operations segment, and the Warsaw Pact player declares that he is going to conduct an assault operation with the 57th Guards. Unsurprisingly, he declares that the town of Hoffheim is the objective for this operation. During the movement step, he moves his first unit, this unit here, into this minefield. And that means that he is going to have to roll 3 times on the mine attack table. He also checks to see whether the enemy unit that he is facing is real, and it turns out that it is, which means that this unit is an enemy ZOC, which is a die roll modifier on the mine attack table. So he refers to the mine attack table, and he sees that he's going to have to subtract 1 from his die roll to account for the ZOC, and so he rolls 3 times. He rolls a 7, he rolls a 9, and he rolls a 2. The 2 becomes a 1, and that claims 1 step. So he reduces that unit by 1 step. Next, he determines that he is going to enter the engineer and another one of his battalions into this hex here. The rules state that he must roll for the engineer first. So again, he consults the mine attack table, and here he sees that he's going to have to add 1 die for the engineer, which is a good thing, and subtract 1 from his die roll for being in an enemy ZOC. So the 2 effects cancel out, which means that he will only lose a step on a die roll of 1. For the engineer, he rolls a 7. The engineer is just fine, which means that its die roll modifier will now affect the die rolls for the remaining 3 steps. So they will all now die on just a 1. Had the engineer been wiped out, then they would all die on a 1 or 2. So he rolls a 4, he rolls a 3, and he rolls an 8, and none of these rolls claim a step. Finally, he moves his last unit in here, and again he's going to have to roll 3 times, and this time the ZOC negative does apply to him, so he will die on a 1 or a 2. He refers back to the mine table, and he rolls a 4, he rolls a 6, and he rolls a 1, which becomes a 0, and so that claims 1 step. So again, the Warsaw Pact player eliminates 1 step of this unit. All right, so now the play goes past the jamming phase because the Warsaw Pact player has no jammer under his forward headquarters, and directly to the defensive fire call step. The NATO player has no artillery in range, and so he proceeds directly to the defensive fire combat step. He's just going to make a defensive fire combat against this unit here. He is a 4, doubled for being infantry defending in the objective hex in close terrain. So his 4 becomes an 8, returned to a 4 by the standard division by 2. The NATO player rolls a die. The roll is a 5, so he inflicts a straight 4 hits. That's enough to claim 1 step from this unit. The Warsaw Pact player now looks to fire back. He's got 1 step here. He's got 3 steps here, and he's got 2 steps here. So he's got a grand total of 6 steps. 6 times 5 is 30. The engineer also adds 1, so he's got a grand total of 31. This is halved to 15. So the Warsaw Pact player rolls the die, and he rolls a 2, which is a -2 hit modifier. So his 15 becomes a 13, which is depressing because the defense strength for this unit is a 7. And had he rolled a 3 or higher, he would have inflicted at least 14 hits, which would have eliminated this unit even if it retreated. But because he only inflicted 13 hits, the NATO player elects to absorb 7 hits by retreating. Its NATO defense strength of 3 plus 4 for the town equals 7. So he absorbs 7 hits by retreating, leaving the remaining 6 hits as insufficient to claim another step. So now the NATO player must refer to the retreat priorities chart. And here he sees that the highest retreat priority is not adjacent to an enemy unit that just fired. Further down is not into a minefield. So he must obey the higher priority, which gives him only 1 hex that he can retreat into. So that means that the unit is forced to retreat into this minefield. So now it is the NATO player who must roll. So the NATO player refers back to the mine attack table. He is not in an enemy ZOC, nor does he have an engineer with him, so he will just die on a 1. The NATO player rolls the die. It's a 3. He has survived. So now the Warsaw Pact player wants to advance into this hex. However, here we come to another rule about mines. Any unit can advance into a minefield. It can advance out of a minefield. But in either case, it is going to suffer a mine attack. There is no exemption from this. Equally, a unit can retreat into a minefield, and it can retreat out of a minefield, but it will always suffer a mine attack. There is no exemption from this. So in this case, because he's got an engineer here, the Warsaw Pact player elects to advance with these steps here, and so this unit advances in. And because there is an engineer present in the hex and no enemy ZOC, this is a +1 DRM, which means that it is absolutely impossible for the unit to suffer a mine loss. Because even if he rolls a 1, the engineer is going to change that die roll to a 2, meaning he will be immune from that mine attack. So the Warsaw Pact player completes this advance in here, which engages the Bradley and therefore flips it. And the Warsaw Pact player declines to advance either of the other 2 units in, because if he did, they would also suffer a mine attack, and they don't have an engineer with them. In the following turn, he plans to make a deliberate exit, which will not risk his units. And these 2 units here will take cover next turn in this town, and hopefully this unit will survive at the end of the following turn during the engineering phase, it will be able to remove this minefield. And so that concludes the operation. Each of these units is flipped to its used side, and that also concludes our clip.